Welcome to the regular briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. Good to see all of you here. We got a good attendance today. We have a good attendance up here too. All the commissioners are in place and ready to, as they used to say in my day, rock and roll. So it should be a pretty interesting meeting. I'm going to introduce our vice chairman in a moment, just as a thought you may be interested in. He was singing a song that Petula Clark made many years ago. When you're alone and you're feeling so lonely, you can always go downtown. Well, I want you to know you're all downtown right now. And by the way, he also sings in the choir at the Methodist Church. And he was, going down the whole list. He was superintendent of schools in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system since I was a little boy. I'd like to introduce to you the vice chairman, Don Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that introduction. Maybe thank you for that. Welcome to the November 3rd, 2022 briefing. And we are going to have a couple items before we get to the briefing session. And before we begin our discussion, I'd like to call on Commissioner Wisenhunt. She is going to recognize a staff member for an award they recently received. Commissioner Wisenhunt, thank you.
Thank you. Al Thomas, would you come forward, please? And you can bring your cohorts with you if you'd like to come up to the podium. Al Thomas is a peer support specialist for men enrolled in the county's Stepping Up program. He also teaches a 46-hour hybrid peer support course at Durham Technical Community College. Oh. Mr. Thomas is a national certified peer specialist with a forensic enhancement and a RAP trainer and facilitator. Mr. Thomas has used his personal experience and the study of human behavior to promote self-help and self-advocacy, as well as other sustainable skills of daily living. The author of 2 books, The Blackout Life Plan and Blueprint to Wellness, he has worked on countless forums and committees that help individuals improve their life and create the reality that they deserve. As a peer support specialist, Mr. Thomas assists detainees, including the high-risk population at the Forsyth County Detention Center, with tools and resources essential to helping them get acclimated back into society. I'm proud to announce that he was selected to receive the Sally Zinman Lifetime Achievement Award. This award will be presented at the Alternatives Conference hosted by the National Coalition of Mental Health Recovery. Congratulations, Al, and we're so lucky to have you here in Forsyth. Thank you for what you do. Al, would you like to say a few words, or had you read?
Yeah, I'll say a few words.
We'll come to the mic and say.
Step up.
Mm-hmm.
There, or?
That, you're right.
Well, I was reading on Sally Zinman, and one of the things that we shared is she too went through the mental health process herself, and I have lived the experiences. What I do with the super program, our Stepping Up program, is I think the most important tool that we offer is self-advocacy. In that self-advocacy, we share the certain tools with our participants to make them more self-sufficient and independent. Because at some time, our program is usually a year, so we do want them to move along eventually. So we equip them with those tools, and I think that's probably one of the best things that we offer. And in them advocating for themselves, they learn to believe in themselves. Like a mentor and role models did for me, we just do the same thing. So it's an honor to work in this field, for I can give back.
Thank you so much, Al. And Amber, thank you.
We have 3 discussion items, and the first, we're going to have a presentation from David Streeter and Ron Lewis. And they're going to talk about the Charters of Freedom Monument. They were here just sort of there. They are. There he is.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Ms. Luke, thank you for helping me with the technical part of getting the PowerPoint here and getting that loaded. Also to the county attorney and others and the citizens that are here today. I'd like to introduce to you Ron Lewis, my very good friend and colleague, and I'll turn this over to him in just a moment. First, what I wanted to do was just set the stage a little bit to tell you a little bit about who we are. But we are Foundation Forward, Charters of Freedom, and we build charters of freedom throughout the country. But because we're from North Carolina, that's where we concentrate. The charters of freedom consist of the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And since that time, we have evolved and grown. And now we also do the Civil Rights Amendments that sit right beside the Civil Rights when we do a setting, which emulates pretty much exactly what is in Washington, D.C. and the National Archives. As a matter of fact, Ron and I and some others just a couple of months ago had a great meeting in Washington, D.C., meeting with the deputy of the National Archives, and we are working with them side by side and doing a lot of their community outreach, and we'll be doing other things as far as a partnership. I'm just going to cover a couple little things, then turning it over to Ron, like I said. First, though, we build settings and we do not build monuments. And let me take just a moment to explain the difference and why. A monument is something that's very important, and it pays respect and an homage to people and events and things that have happened. And they were great things, but they're no longer with us. The Charters of Freedom, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Civil Rights Amendments, those things are alive and well. These are the reasons and what makes the difference between the United States of America and just about every other country on the face of the earth. You know, a lot of places we could be arrested and incarcerated for meeting in a quorum such as this and talking about things that carry freedom and liberty along with them. So therefore, we call it a setting, and we try to stay away from the word monument. So that's the difference, and that's the reason we came up with calling them settings. Also, permanent display is something else that we refer to them from time to time. Also, above everything else, we are a 501c3 education nonprofit organization. We are apolitical and we are a-religious. I'm not saying that we're not religious, that we're not political. Matter of fact, we want everyone to take advantage of all their constitutional rights, but we do not put one above the other, any political party or a religious affiliation. Like I said, we are an education organization, and we build settings so that they have access to the community 24/7, preferably, education, and also then to everyone in the community, focusing in on school students. And this is not only K through 12, which I'm sure Mr. Martin, or is it Dr. Martin, is very much aware of, and but also the education materials that we have and that we give away. I want to add that we don't charge for anything. Can also be used all into at least the freshman and sophomore years of college. So anyway, based on that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Ron to come up and continue with the presentation, and he'll go through this and we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Hello. What an honor and a privilege it is to be in beautiful Forsyth County today. I arranged for the first meeting of the Charters of Freedom 10 years ago. And I have enjoyed every day since then. My previous responsibility was a county manager. I did that for over 30 years. So now I look forward every day to talking about the Charters of Freedom and what they stand for, and try to make them available, not only to students, but to citizens and everyone across the country. David, how do I advance the slide?
Okay, we go next to the video, if you'd
Okay.
like to show that.
We're going to show you a brief video that tells the story better than I can.
In 1822, a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power knowledge gives. Our hope is that our future leaders will come from communities where they have their own charters of freedom setting, that your children will no longer grow up just talking about the Constitution and Bill of Rights in Washington. They'll be talking about their United States Constitution and their Bill of Rights, the ones they grew up with, right in your own community. My question is, are you ready to be a part of history? Because we're going to dedicate your charters of freedom. It's going to be here for the next 300 to 500 years, and your future generations are going to know you were here.
Again, the video tells the story better than I can. But I'm going to fill in a couple of blanks, and we'll be on our way and let you have the rest of your meeting. But we have built and dedicated and gifted 26 charters of freedom in North Carolina. We have 43 nationwide. We're in 11 different states. our goal originally, our business plan was to build all of North Carolina, the 100 counties, and then go into South Carolina and build the 46 counties in South Carolina, and then move across the country. However, having worked a couple of national shows, word got out, and we're in as far north as Alaska now, and as far west as Utah. We have, I won't try to name all the states, but I do want you to know that we're back to our original business plan, which is to try to build all 100 counties in North Carolina over the next 3 years. This is our first presentation to what this old county manager calls the Big Five. The Big Five counties in North Carolina, which you are one of. This is our very first presentation to the Big Five. The 26 that we have built across North Carolina are mainly in the West, because that's where we live. We're in the West. We do have some in the East, and we're projected this coming year to build many more in the East. But we're so proud to be here. How many of you have been to the National Archives building? Wow, I'm impressed. Okay. Normally, when I ask that question, about 10% of the people will raise their hand. That's why we do what we do every day. It's because the majority of our citizens haven't had a chance to go to the National Archives building and experience. You go through these big bronze gates and you're right there where the documents are. The Declaration of Independence is on the left, the 4 pages of the Constitution are in the middle, and the original proposed Bill of Rights are on the right side. We try to duplicate that as close as we can. Now, 10 years ago when we started, we couldn't take tape measures or cameras into the National Archives building. So our design is based on 2 steps of a short guy and markings on his wife's clothing. But we're really pretty close to what the original dimensions are in Washington, and we duplicate that experience. This is where it all started, on the courthouse lawn of Old Burke. At one time, that was the furthest western courthouse in the state of North Carolina. The Supreme Court of North Carolina actually held their summer sessions there because it was just a little cooler than it was in Raleigh. But anyway, on the courthouse lawn, Vance and Mary Jo Patterson decided to do this project. Design and build replicas of the Charters of Freedom, display them in a central location open to the public 24/7 with high visibility. And that's the same criteria that we use today. Again, the Declaration of Independence is on the left, the 4 pages of the Constitution are in the middle, and the original proposed Bill of Rights is on the right side. That's what the first setting outside of Washington, D.C. looked like on the courthouse lawn of historic Burke County. In the back of the center display, we put a time capsule. We would like to fill that with correspondence, Mr. Chairman, from you, from the superintendent, from perhaps Mayor Joines, so that when it's opened on September the 17th, 2087 across America, people will get an understanding of what life was like in my guess is that we would build this in 2023. So we want to tell the story in 2087 of what Forsyth County was like in 2023. Commissioner McDaniel, if you're here for that, would you please tell the audience that we left the combination with Chairman Plyler? That was supposed to be funny. I'm sorry. I didn't deliver that quite well, did I? Anyway, let's move on because your time is precious. That's the before and after shot of Burke County. there's a story there that I won't tell it. This was the third Charters of Freedom in Asheville, North Carolina. This one demonstrates what a brick setting looks like. We do a lot of brick settings because in the Continental time, brick was the method of construction. This is our new park beside our national headquarters in Valdez, North Carolina. I want to tell you about the Civil Rights Amendments, which would be a fourth pedestal that we would encourage you to allow us to build here in Forsyth County. I was a county manager at one time in Union County, so I thought I was going home to a...
Wait a minute, all the Plylers are in Union County.
Are they?
My golly, I didn't realize you're such a wonderful person.
Yes, there are a lot of Plylers in Union County. Anyway, I thought I was going home for a friendly presentation, and I was presenting to the Monroe City Council, who has the land on which we will be building the Charters of Freedom for Union County. And I got through with my presentation, and the gentleman said to me, "Mr. Lewis, you did a very good job, but you didn't do anything for me." And I looked at him and I said, "Thank you for your feedback, and I appreciate your honesty with me." And I went home. And I talked to our founder and I said, "We have a problem. This young council member didn't think I did anything for him when I made my presentation." And we started putting our heads together as a staff, and we determined that what completes the loop and makes us all the same are the 13th, 14th, 15th, 19th, and 24th Amendments. And we now build a fourth pedestal that has those on it. I went back to Monroe after my wounds had healed, and I made a similar presentation to the council. And the young man who had questioned me when I unveiled the amendments had tears running down his cheek because we had responded to what he said to us, that you haven't done anything for us. Now, we've looked at several sites in Winston-Salem in Forsyth County. You have several beautiful sites. I like the site outside of this building where the brick mason that made the bricks for many of the structures in Forsyth County are located. If we could build the Charters of Freedom in that location, and if it would be possible to find some of his bricks, that would be an amazing accomplishment, not only for Forsyth County, but for Foundation Forward as well. I'm not telling you where to put it. I'm suggesting to you that that's where you might want to put it. There's the Civil Rights Amendments. We're extremely proud of that. Often, the community uses the Charters of Freedom for different events, Veterans Day and Memorial Day and other events. It's very versatile and can be used for other things. There are 200 people in the rain in Jacksonville, Illinois, on the day that we dedicated their Charters of Freedom. They wanted to be there so bad that they came out in the rain for the dedication of that setting. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what it's all about. This teacher bringing her students to the Charters of Freedom and teaching them a little bit about the documents, what they stand for, and how they work today, as well in 2022 as they did in 1781. Excuse me, I want to get my dates right. You see Benjamin Franklin in the picture, that's me. I'm trying to lose my profile for Ben, but that's the hardest thing I've ever tried to do at 73. It just doesn't want to go away. So it's fun dressing up like Benjamin Franklin. This group of students are homeschoolers. Commissioner, Mr. Superintendent, I hope I live long enough to see the public school students come with the same vigor or same motivation to learn about the charters of freedom as the homeschoolers do. The homeschoolers have a real passion for the charters of freedom. And I just wanted to share with you that slide. Foundation Forward is an education nonprofit organization. We're prepared and we have funds in hand to gift to Forsyth County the charters of freedom. As of this day, and I know firsthand because for the first 8 years I was a treasurer of the corporation in addition to being the facilitator. The facilitator means I'm the first one into your town to talk about it. As of this day, we haven't spent the first tax dollar on any of the charters of freedom that we have built. It's all private money. Now, that's probably going to change as society is changing and the time is changing. Cost of things are changing. There's some interest in the North Carolina General Assembly in helping us build the remaining 69 or 68 charters that we haven't finished. But we'll see how that goes. But as of this date, we haven't spent any tax dollars. There are 3,143 counties, boroughs, parishes, and special districts across the country. Our goal over the next 10 years will be to build as many of those as we can. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it, Mr. Chairman.
You have made a great presentation. In fact, I couldn't help but sit here and think while you were speaking, and then you said, we've seen a site that might work. But if you'll notice when you go outside, I think it's a $120 million courthouse is going up right next door to this building.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not trying to predispose anyone from saying, well, this is where we're going to do it, this is what it's going to take care of, but so for some reason or another, it just seems like a natural. We haven't dedicated the courthouse, and what a wonderful thing to have if we could have this particular project completed by the time I'm not trying to pressure our county manager either.
He's taking notes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, but by the time we got to the place where we have the ribbon cutting and we have a large crowd, that would seem to me to be a perfect way to start. And you just done, both of you have done a wonderful job.
If you, as a board, accept our gift, we will send you what's called an LOI. That's a business term for a letter of intent. Now, in local government, we would call that a memorandum of understanding. So we will send the memorandum of understanding to you. The left side of this slide shows what we're willing to gift, and the right side would show what we would suggest you might want to do to complement it. But again, all that'll be in writing, and it'll be crystal clear as to what our responsibilities are. Now, Mr. Chairman, in a project your size, your cost is not even a change order. It would, in what you would invest in the charters of freedom. Now, I'm going to be quiet and ask, do you have any questions of us before David and I leave?
Any questions?
Vice Chairman, I do have some comments, sir. With all due respect, Mr. Lewis, thank you for the presentation today.
Thank
and I'm
you.
going to paraphrase my comments. Martin Luther King advised us that a function of education was to teach and think critically and intensively, right? And in your presentation today, it was very hard for me because I didn't see many that was represented that looked like me. So I think in the future that your presentation may need to be crafted for the audience that you are presenting to. There were a few photos of folks that look like me, but for you to come and ask, and I'm just one portion of this board, to ask for something to come into this community that looks like me, it's hard for me to kind of support. So in the future, I just hope that that's some good feedback for you to take back.
Thank you very much.
You're
Commissioner.
welcome, sir. Thank you for listening.
Any other questions? Well, thank both of you for being here. Look forward to receiving your letter of intent, and we'll give consideration at that point.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a little reversed for us. I hear you saying that you would want our letter of intent prior to voting to accept our gift. Is that what I heard,
I think that's correct, yes.
Commissioner?
Well, typically, that would outline exactly what you have in this slide in writing
I
of
understand.
what you would do, and it would also make it pretty clear what we would do, and then that would be, seems to me,
Well,
I'm surprised that other places are doing that in reverse.
I will draft the LOI, and I will, in the LOI, designate tentatively the location at the front of your new courthouse. Is that what I'll be drafting it for?
Could you just not say location to be determined?
Okay.
I think that'll be helpful, because
Well,
if
we
the
can
board
do that.
chooses to move forward, we'll give it to our construction folks who are actively involved in the courthouse project and see if there's a location, if we want to participate, and if there's a location that looks appropriate.
That's what we'll do.
Great.
Okay?
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, all
Good
the
job.
board members. It's been a pleasure working with your manager and his team. I knew Graham Prevere quite well. In fact, I often consider him my mentor.
Really?
I was the county manager. I started my career in Little Yadkin County, and Graham was always there to help when I ran into a snag and I couldn't solve. So,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All righty. Commissioner Linville, could you give us our audit committee report from last week?
Last Thursday, the audit committee met, and from the information we received, the auditor is working on is on track and seems to be the ending of it pretty close to what the finance and management is expecting. There may be need for extension. I don't think that means any problem. It's just Terry can comment on that. And also, we learned that our internal auditor, Penny Efred, is she here? I don't see the face, but at any rate, she is going to retire at about the end of the year, so we wish her a happy retirement. And so with that, I'll ask Commissioner Elamine or Commissioner Martin, audit members, if they have any thing to say, and then after that, Terry, if you want to make some comments about specific things, do so.
Anything you'd like to say, Fleming?
Your report is excellent, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to say.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, and we certainly appreciate Penny's service to our county for a number of years, and we wish her the best. And she has agreed. It's a little unusual, but she's going to actually help us in the search for a replacement, because it's such a specialized area, and I think we're starting to advertise immediately and get to work on her replacement. But we also had a lot of good reports, a lot of transitions, and I'm really happy that we are where we are, and Terry may want to comment on that. I want to thank her. It was an opportunity for us to thank her for going through a very difficult transition with technology in our conversion of all of our, if you will, sort of antiquated financial record keepings and custom made and so forth to kind of a brand new system, which was a very difficult task for finance. And I appreciate all the work she's done. And the auditors have been able to, our new auditors, by the way, have been able to participate in that. And I don't know if, Mr. Chairman, you may want to ask Terry to speak too.
Terry?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate, excuse me, those comments. As you are aware, we launched our new financial accounting system on October 3rd. And in preparation for that and getting ready for that, it did limit our resources that we had available to devote to the year-end audit. And so working with the auditors, and we mutually agreed that we would extend the deadline out by some 6 weeks. It is absolutely no indication or reflection that there's any concern or problem with the audit. As a matter of fact, we have moved through pretty well, and we'll be set Monday to give them a substantial part of what they need to begin working on. So, and everything, from a preliminary review of the numbers, looks like it's come in right where we would have expected it to. So, not foreseeing any problems, just need a little extra time to get everything wrapped up.
Thank you, Terry. That's all, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Our third discussion item today is Forsyth Humane Society. And actually, our County Manager Dudley Watts and Deputy County Manager Damon Sanders Pratt are going to lead this discussion, and I'll just turn it over to you.
I'll be very brief. We have enjoyed a great relationship with Forsyth Humane Society for several years in terms of a contract to operate the shelter there at Animal Services. Obviously, the sheriff runs the enforcement side of it, and the Forsyth Humane Society has run the shelter side of it. We had received notice from Mark Neff, who's the executive director of Forsyth Humane Society. He is here, and then he also has some board members that they were in a position where they needed to consider termination of the agreement really for financial reasons. And so what I thought would be helpful is if Damon can kind of couch kind of where we are in terms of the history, and then Kimberly Bussey with budget has really done some of the financial analysis, and we're going to give you that. There's actually a report in front of you that has kind of the broad brush situation we're in, and there really are some, we're briefing it as a discussion item today because we're going to need to be bringing some items to you around future board actions. Obviously, just accepting the termination notice, it really does require a level of service discussion, and then sort of the mechanism for the service delivery. And so those are some important decisions we're going to have to move pretty quickly on to make.
So thank you, Mr. Manager. So as the manager noted, we received the official notification of the contractual terms to terminate the agreement that we've been in since January of 2018. The Humane Society and the county decided to work together on care and custody in an effort to improve outcomes for animals, and I think that they have done that. In the meantime, when the county stopped providing care and custody, we also transitioned from a standalone Animal Services Department for enforcement to now the Sheriff's Office handles the enforcement. The Humane Society was doing the care and custody. And so at this point, we've received official notice that they are seeking to no longer provide the care and custody portion. They made an offer, and I'll let Kimberly talk a little bit about that and some of the long-term and short-term considerations of them stepping out and then what would happen moving forward.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So just a little bit of context for where we are financially with the contract with the Humane Society in fiscal year 23. We had a contract in the amount of, the total amount included in the budget in fiscal year 23 for this contract was about $603,286. That was for the contract piece of about $591,000, and this board approved an alternate service level request this fiscal year to add $11,715 to their agreement. So the total is about $603,000. The request from the Humane Society was to increase that to $1,850,000 for their calendar year 24. This was a significant increase, obviously, in the contract. And so after some discussions with management and staff, and we felt like there may be some support to increase the Humane Society contract in an amount of about $1,083,000 for fiscal year '24, and that was proposed to the Humane Society as an alternative, but they declined to continue without the full request of $1.85 million. That's kind of where we are at this point.
So the report actually has, it's kind of an early view of sort of the next steps on this. And you can see, in terms of the level of service and some of those, what we attempted to calculate is what the cost would be. What would the cost be for us to go back into it at our 2017 level of service? And so Kimberly's done a great job of capturing that. And so that's certainly possible. The other issue is, and it was one of the early issues that we had before this agreement, is we operated an adoption program out of the shelter there on University, and then the Humane Society operated, the country club location, and there were a few other smaller nonprofits that actually did some. We transferred some animals to. We had always freely transferred animals between our shelter and country club, so the Forsyth Humane Society, kind of had access. We just wanted the animals to be adopted, but we did compete with them some in terms of does somebody come to our shelter, or do they go to country club to adopt a specific animal? Two separate systems, all of that. We do have some cost. We'll have some cost getting back into it in terms of some automated systems and some things like that. We will have just some transition costs because there is a shelter permitting kind of question that's out there. And so we have a fair number of things in a fairly short period of time if we were to take over operations on January the 1st to sort of sort through. One of those issues is, when we go back into it, do we operate an adoption front door, or do we just work with animal welfare groups to freely transfer to them and really not compete, but sort of work together on that front? There is an offer that was out there from the Humane Society to provide 1 quarter's kind of transition there. It is roughly one quarter of their $1.8 million request, so it's fairly expensive. I would suggest ideally that would be negotiable, but my honest sense is it's probably not. But it would be great if we would have a little bit of time to make the transition if we brought it back in-house. And so, but we will do what we need to do as quickly as we can do to get so that we don't have a lapse in services. And then the other issue is, I've been in early discussions with the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff about, he operates the compliance, the enforcement side of it. There is no change really to that at all. He could operate the shelter in addition to the enforcement piece, or not. And so I honestly don't know exactly where he is with whether or not he would want to do that. Obviously, we will continue to have those conversations, and then but also be prepared to really provide the level of service at the funding level that this board deems appropriate. And so there's a number of ways to look at that. You can look at where we were in 2019 and the level of service we left, and have that. It's almost like an alternate service level process that you go through just in a normal budget. Is here's one level, here's an enhanced level, here's and here's frankly where the Humane Society's level of service was. And so we will very quickly develop those decision options for you, because we need to move pretty quickly. What did I miss, Damon? Anything?
Well, let me just open up first questions. I've got a couple, but there may be other questions that could jump out here.
I had one, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair. Has there been a chance to survey the community to see what their concerns might be on this issue?
So the notice was given in October. We've been working in the meantime to maybe see if there was a compromise we could have. So we haven't gone out to the community with this information until the notice was official, and we shared it with you before we started to what others
Gotcha.
wanted to do.
Okay.
Where money is concerned, what happens to the money that we've been spending? What will we do with it if and when we stop spending? And basically, what would it cost to get back in?
So the contract in the current year is approximately $600,000. So we're halfway through the year,
How much?
$600,000.
Okay.
So we're halfway through the year, so that balance would remain if we ended the contract in December 31st. So we'd add to that what we needed to get back into providing care and custody, or whatever level you decided was appropriate. We'd start with that $300,000, and then whatever on top of that is necessary for the level of service that the board directs. We would.
So the Humane Society was saying the $600,000 they're getting needs to be doubled if they stay in.
From $600,000 to, if you annualize it to $1,850,000, $1,850,000.
And I just can't read the number right here on the, so that if we were to continue the service, kind of a, I guess, a cost of doing business adjustment from our 18, what kind of number is that additional amount per year on an annual basis?
I think it depends on the level of service that you go into, but if you look at sort of maybe adding back a handful of employees and getting back to a similar service level, I think the increase was about 7 or 8% over what the current fiscal year 23 adopted budget was for total animal services. And that's if you can, again, there's some factors there. I think if depending on where the organizational structure of this, if it stays with the sheriff, if it's own department, there's some factors there. But I would say the lowest option that you have there is about 7% increase of the fiscal year 24 budget over the fiscal year 23 adopted.
Yeah, so we did this, we tried to look at it in terms of full year terms, and so on, I guess it's the second page of the analysis in the chart, the lowest cost option would be to just resume custody of care. There would be 6 positions restorative in the sheriff's department. We would restore 6 positions either in the sheriff's department or in a new departmental budget or a division of some other existing department. Without the adoptions front door, that would cost you about $148,860 over and above the current budget. If you restore the 15 positions, that's going to cost you about $633,000 over and above the current amount, annualized for the full year. There's obviously levels of service. There's probably a few options kind of in between that a little bit. We have stopped doing a few things, but the positions were cut. When we eliminated licensing, we took some position reductions based on that. Those are really the options that are out there. The amount in the FHS alternate proposal, that's what we submitted to them as our proposal. And I really, in talking with board members, tried to understand, what your feelings were, and that's what I felt like that you would be okay, that we could offer up to the Forsyth Humane Society over and above the current budget year to try to continue the services. They declined that. And then that top number in green, the $1,354,000, is the FY24 number, the next year number, because we can deal with it in this year, but that would be the next year number in new money for to continue with the Forsyth Humane Society agreement. So you've got options already kind of outlined there. We wanted to get this to you today. Just so you can start thinking through things. To go to Commissioner Elameen's question, my suspicion is there'll be some sunshine, there'll be some news, some media coverage on this. We'll certainly cover it on our website with our communications efforts around the place we find ourselves in, and it really is around a policy decision around level of service, cost, and kind of where we go from here.
What is the total current budget of the Humane Society, including our participation?
So there was some discussion with the Humane Society to try to establish what their current expenditures are right now for just this location, just our animal shelter location. They indicated it was a little over 2 million. And of that amount, about 1.7 is in salaries. They have about 43 people on staff.
How many?
43
43.
in the location dedicated.
Are they all full-time
I think about 9 part-time
plus or part of the 43?
as part of the 43. Mm-hmm.
And I would probably defer to Mr. Neff. If at any point you hear something that's not accurate, jump up and let's make sure that we have clear information there.
Good?
So I appreciate you taking the time and the opportunity to hear the Humane Society's request. And a couple of pieces that we wanted to make sure that as we go into this is not just a dollar request. As we presented to the county, Forsyth Humane Society's budget, operating out of the UNC location as we call it, is roughly $2.1 million per year. A majority of that is going to be in staffing because it requires full-time animal care, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is no getting around that quality of service that must be maintained. If you go back to 2017 when the county ran it and less staffing, there were tremendous amounts of issues as far as the qualities of care that existed. So therefore, part of our mission during this period of time was to improve the quality of service, not only for the animals, but for the members of the community. Much of the body of work that we do impacts the community at which we serve. So it is not just about the animals. We actually work providing services to our community who are underserved, providing them resources to keep their animals at home, providing them the resources that they need within this community to be able to keep those pieces out. Part of what has been requested as we look at this budget is the quality of care be changed in how Forsyth Humane Society is providing it, whether that to be remove a foster program, whether that to be removing a medical program in order to reduce cost. Ultimately, what that will do is drive the number of animals that are euthanized in this community up. Forsyth County is the 4th largest, and we are the lowest paid county when it comes to animal services. I provided documentation to individuals from the 2021 state reports that shows the average county is funded at $1.5 to $1.6 million for the animal components of their counties. Alamance is funded at 1.6 and puts through less animals than we do here in Forsyth County. Forsyth County manages over 6,000 dogs and cats coming through its facility. So it's important as we look at this budget to understand it's not a matter of how we change the number of head counts. It's really how it's going to impact our community, how it's going to impact the animals, and how it's going to impact the people that are around us. So throughout the last couple of years, we've partnered with the Sheriff's Department and have formed an amazing relationship where we've been able to provide strong services to our community, and we've been able to stand at the front line in the state of North Carolina as being one of the top leaders in this state for the work that we do. We are truly looked at in Forsyth County as being one of the most progressive communities in North Carolina. If we fail to look at this budget appropriately and fund the needs of the organization based on the services that are being provided, we will take such a strong step backwards, not only for the animals, but for the community as a whole.
So how much of this 2.7 is raised by the Humane Society?
So it's 2.1. And 2.1 is the cost for services over there. And so our ask was 1.85. The first thing that we did is we wanted to be very clear. Forsyth Humane Society is not looking to make a profit in any way, shape, or form. Any adoption fee associated from any animal that rolled into the facility was removed from that operating expense, which is why the ask was 1.85, which is the exact operating cost of that business. The Humane Society continues to fundraise for our country club location, which provides the community outreach piece of the work that we do. The work that we do through the county facility is a county-required piece of it. It is an open admissions facility, which is required to be in place to take these animals in.
So the money you get from the county today is only for the facility that we used to operate ourselves?
That is correct.
Not for Country Club?
That is correct.
And the 2.1 is just for that facility?
That is correct.
Can you tell me what the number is for Country Club?
Absolutely. So we look at about 1.5 to 1.6 million on the budget at the Country Club location. That's where we provide our community resource food pantry. We partner with the community as far as some of the in-home tactics that we use in order to keep animals out of the shelter. So we provide crates, we provide kennels, we provide dog training, we provide food through our food pantry. We are currently partnered with eight faith-based food pantries in order to distribute food to animals, and that all comes out of that Country
So
Club budget.
now, my next question is, can you give me a number of animals that are visited at Country Club or are at Country Club, are involved in the annual budget there, and the number at the Forsyth County facility?
So the way that the system is currently set up is the University North location serves as the intake facility. So the animals come in there because there are legal requirements here in the state of North Carolina for hold periods and quarantine periods. You have your 3-day stray holds.
You do that at our facility?
At that facility, correct. So all animals start their process through that University North location.
So it'd be very difficult to know the number of animals at one location as opposed to the other, because they all have intake at one.
They have intake at one.
How many animals were taken in last year?
So in 2021's numbers, which was provided, we had 5,534 dogs and cats come in through that facility.
5,534 something.
This year, we're over 6,000 already. So we're seeing a 19% increase in intake in Forsyth County.
Gosh, you really know what you're talking about. What's the deadline on this?
Again, that's based on the contract piece here. So, again, to open up these discussions, part of what we understood was the exit had to be in place before we could renegotiate a new contract. So that contract exit has a 90-day negotiation on it. Again, the Humane Society is more than willing to entertain and sit down and have these conversations, provide the reports, the details, and any questions that you guys have regarding those service levels.
And with the number of people you have on the payroll, that's what I'm hearing you say is probably by mid-January or the end of January, we need to make a decision one way or the other. And you're talking about all the jobs and people who have the experience and know what they're doing. If we sacrifice that, then we got to go back in and train all the other people.
I think the biggest piece that when we look at that is not only will we sacrifice, we will take a 5-year lead back. The commissioners in the county made an agreement with Forsyth Humane Society in 2018 because you believed in the work that we did. You believed that we could make a difference in our community. And in the last 5 years, we have successfully proven that we have done that. We have increased the save rate from 36% in our county, which meant 64% of the animals going in that building died. It is now at a 78% save rate. We are successfully moving that forward for our community, which again is something for us to all be very proud of. But when we also look at the amount of interactions that we've been able to have with the community that we've never been able to have before, we are no longer alienating members of our community. We're bringing people in, we're having conversations, we're informing, we're giving them the tools and the resources that they need today that will change tomorrow and the next day. And as I shared with the county manager, our goal is to work on reducing that intake. That takes time. And as that intake reduces, so does the fee for service reduce. So again, as we continue this work, it's going to get better and it will get less expensive to do over time, but it's going to take some time to get there.
Well, here's my problem. When we first got into this arrangement with the Humane Society, we were all thrilled to bring you on board, and it was going to be great. At that time, you had a part-time vet that volunteered, and we provided some medical room or something. I forget what it was. It wasn't very much money, and things were going fairly well. Now, how many vets do you have on staff now?
Mr. Kaplan, that's a great question. So I have a full-time staff veterinarian who manages the care of the 6,000 animals.
One.
So there's the full-time staff veterinarian, and I also have a full-time surgeon. So she performs all of the in-house spay and neuters. There is
Okay, so the services have expanded.
Yes.
You do all the spay and neuters now?
You have to.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So compared to when we first had this agreement with you back, 5, 6 years ago, I can't remember, our cost was pretty much where we were already with what we were doing at our shelter. And now it has just grown exponentially, and I'm trying to figure out, is it that many more cases that you deal with, or is it the way that you deal with the cases you have?
It is the landscape of animal welfare in 2022. So if you look at what was done in 2017, it wasn't unheard of for shelters to be sitting at a 50 and 60% euthanasia rate. That was considered okay. As communities have gotten better, as communities have started to understand that it's not just about the animal piece, that there is a human factor in it, the landscape of animal welfare has changed significantly. And I encourage you, in your free time, look at Charlotte-Mecklenburg, look at Burlington, look at Alamance, look at Asheville. Every website will show a foster program, and these are municipal shelters. They're not 501c3s, and I want to be clear about that. Look at theirs. It is a requirement now in animal welfare to run a foster program. It is a requirement to have a medical program. You cannot and will not be able to, for what we're paying our surgeons, spare neuter the animals in this community for anything less. You won't be able to get an appointment for 6 to 8 weeks at minimum for a single animal. Not to mention, we're spaying and neutering over 3,000 animals. So our community does not have the resources to do what we're doing without that in-house service.
I think we'll get in the weeds later, but basically, you have expanded services, all to be positive, I got to say. But you've done that, and it obviously costs more money.
Sure.
You don't want to contract. You don't want to go back to the way it was, I assume. So does this portend that 10 years from now, you're going to have, if we were to go along with this request, is it going to be 3 times as big then as you're asking for now? Or is it going to be, is this where we're going to end up, would you guess?
So 10 years from now, my goal would be that this contract would be at 50% of what it is right now, less, because the goal is to reduce the intake. It's to produce the services in our community that they need to prevent the intakes into your open admission facility.
Well, I wish you well. That would be great.
Thank you.
And I have to say, I don't mean to be critical, but you guys have done a great job, and we really do appreciate it, and would love to see it stay on. But there's got to be some fiscal controls.
Absolutely.
So it's either in the number of people or heads and bids, as we used to say in the legislature. So I'm hoping that you're right, that it will be half, and that'd be an honest, great goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to do a little follow-up on
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Kaplan's comments. And particularly, I mean, and by the way, I remember going to a Rotary Club presentation on the fostering program, the success and basically the reduction in euthanasia rates and so forth. I mean, just have really been outstanding, and it has been a great program. I think what Commissioner Kaplan's talking about, the cost escalation piece, which deals with expanded services, my curiosity is, how have you been paying for that before now, number one? And then number two, it's like, when did you decide this was a crisis? Because our budget cycle is in sort of March, April, May, and everything sort of rolled through that period of time and we didn't hear anything. And we're in the middle of a budget year with a substantial request increase. Basically, we're looking at a good doubling what we have been committing, 200% increase in that. And while I do understand that obviously the pandemic did a lot of things in terms of animals, in terms of supply of the ones that would be in shelters and then now and so forth. I mean, I think everybody was looking for and they're shuttered in, and probably a lot of animals were adopted during that time and so forth. But I'm a little curious about those things. I mean, maybe you can answer those first. First of all, how were you paying this before? Because this didn't happen overnight, and you all have been paying the difference over the past few years. And then this timing piece with this gigantic increase. I'll try those first, and I got a couple others.
All right. So, Dr. Martin, first of all, if you look at the increase piece of it, the first part of the question was how we've been paying for it. Forsyth Humane Society has done an amazing job of fundraising. As a 501c3, I will tell you personally, I have spent a tremendous amount of time standing in front of donors, flying across the country, standing in front of national sponsors, offsetting some of the cost and the expense of this programs. But as you all know, it is 2022. And in a time where things are a bit more challenging, it is a bit harder to get folks to be able to donate in a way that they were previous to the pandemic. So as a 501c3, we are certainly experiencing a bit more challenge getting some of those donors. Your larger donors donate through stock and those types of. No one's touching those markets right now. I won't even look at my personal retirement account, let alone think about being able to donate. So that's the first piece, is we've done an amazing job fundraising. However, we're at a place today where those fundraising options are minimized. The amount of reserves that we have become exhausted. So we have two choices: make the request of this county to appropriately fund the contract, which would be in alignment with what every other county in this state is doing, or we bankrupt the organization and Forsyth Humane Society does not exist. And that is certainly not something we're going to do. It is more important that we maintain that mission. The second piece, the timing of it, I will share with you that as the new executive director for Forsyth Humane Society, who's been in position just a short time over a year, I was not part of the last rounds of negotiations. So I certainly can't speak. That would be a conversation for Mr. Pratt and the former ED, who's no longer with the organization. So I want to be cautious to not speak about what did or did not happen during that time, other than to say that wasn't managed then. But as an ED who's now looking at the financials of the organization, the long-term success of our organization is why the timing of this has taken place.
I think our staff asked earlier about the cost of various pieces of the services that are in addition to the $600,000 we're providing now. Well, what is the cost of, is fostering a part of that? What is the medical cost? What is the cost, your staffing that's non-medical, whatever it is, the pieces that make up that 1.3 million. And I believe I'm accurate that we did not get an answer to that question.
Sure. So I can easily answer those questions for you. So when you look at the base medical expenses, if you walk into a veterinarian 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, you paid $100 for an x-ray. If you walk in today, you will pay $250 for that same x-ray. Those are services, obviously, that have gone up. When you look at the cost of medical for each animal, and again, as we look at a 19% increase in the number of animals coming in, there's an increase in the number of animals you're caring for. The cost of services have increased. The cost of foods have increased. The cost of transport for chemicals has increased. Your chemical costs have increased. Salary lines have increased. Again, bringing those salaries in line to where they should be. And again, we are nowhere near where we need to be on the salary line appropriately when we look at 2022 for employees. Just getting them to a place where there's some sustainability. There was an increase in that salary line. So every single piece of this industry that you've touched has got an increase that has gone on. So there's not an area of animal welfare that has not been affected by, where the economy is today. And taking every other part of it out.
All of us understand that.
Yeah.
Clearly, county services, everything has been a piece of that. The question I guess what bothers me about this is that there's not an option that is somewhere in between. Some opportunity where there is some scale back, maybe there is some adjustment, to do that, because essentially, I cannot speak for this board, but at this time of the year, this sudden of an approach to jump in and say we're going to commit to this from now on, I can speak for myself. I will not commit to that from this now on. And I don't know about the rest of our group. So I'm a little disappointed that there's not more of an in-between. We could maybe trim this, we could do this, we could make some adjustments here. We could hope that our fundraising increases. We could hope, we'll try to work on that, whatever it is, to try to go forward. So I don't sense much, and almost sense they just want to get out.
No. So I will be honest with you. Personally, the Forsyth Humane Society has invested 5+ years. I personally have invested working 6 days a week out of that facility. I have had to make the life and death decisions every single day, 6 days a week for 5 years of every animal that's come through that facility. So the desire to exit is not the case at all. What I think is the challenge for folks to understand is this isn't a typical business sector. You can reduce payroll expense. You could reduce a marketing expense. You can reduce some of the other pieces or variables within your business to save expense. But when you ask me to do that, I have to kill an animal to do that. And that's the difference.
Let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
And it really it would appear to me, and I'm not in your business at all, but it would appear to me that your very successful fostering program has made a huge difference in basically the numbers of animals that have had to been euthanized. And what is the cost of continuing that? If we scale back to some other, can you all continue the fostering part? And as the manager mentioned, I mean, what is your cost of that? Obviously, you get a lot of people fostering for free, but what is your cost of that? And what does it take to keep that program going? Because that seems to be extremely successful.
It is extremely successful, and it's an intricate part of it. And I think that's also part of the challenging piece as we explain the logistics of this. So it isn't something where you just pick up an animal and send it to foster. There's so many pieces to this equation that, you've got the legal hold periods. So you've got to hold them in that facility during this period of time the Department of Ag has said, your 3-day, your 5-day, your 10-day, your cruelty investigations, et cetera. All along, there's other pieces of that puzzle moving through. Those are going to be your owner surrenders. Those are going to be animals that have come in the door. So you're shifting your inventory, for lack of better terms, daily based on where you're at as far as cage spacing goes. So today I could have 600 animals in foster. Tomorrow I'll have 400 animals in foster. The day after that I'll have 700 animals. It is literally going to be based on the dynamics of what's coming and going through the door that moment in time in that day. There is not a specific cost associated, and I think that's the challenge is the foster is being considered as a program. It's not a program. It's an actual piece of the process that's working through because you can't do it without that. So you can't pull fostering out of the equation because it's an automatic euthanasia. So it is a step in the process to a successful outcome. So, and again, we've done tremendous amount of work. I don't know if any of you have looked at the social media. Every single day, we're A, looking for fosters, and B, looking for supplies for fosters. We've partnered with all the national organizations that are supportive of that program, but you can't pull or associate a specific cost because that's variable based on the day and the moment in that program. And animal services can't exist without it, which is why no municipal shelter in North Carolina does not have it, unless you want high levels of euthanasia.
I probably hear you, but I probably don't agree with you. That's just
Absolutely.
probably. I do understand process. I understand it's not a program. It deals with volume of animals available to adopt, and your process part deals with timing, the quarantining, delays. It deals with how long before an animal would be killed, for example. How long all those things happen. Obviously has to do with the inventory that's available and so forth, and then the likelihood that you will get how many people will foster. But it seems that process is to my knowledge, I don't know if we were doing a very active fostering program in the past, and you all brought that to the table, and it was been great. But I'm having trouble with the all or none, and I think we need to be somewhere in between. And at least I don't feel like you're helping us get there. So I guess we'll try to decide on what the in-between is and what we can support. Any other questions?
Two quick questions, Mr. Vice Chair. Oh, Mr. Chairman? Go ahead. Okay. Could you give us an idea how the personnel has increased from 2018 to 2022 for the organization? And the follow-up question is, I know we put some PAYGO funds into the surgical room you have on that site. Do you plan to continue to use that regardless of what we decide on this matter, or what is your plan in terms of using that equipment going forward?
So when we talk about headcount, in 2018, we would have probably had around 26 to 27 headcounts. They're variable positions as far as part-time or full-time. We are now sitting roughly at that 43 at full capacity, which we are not at. And the reason that has changed is the State Department of North Carolina's 52J regulations have changed significantly. The amount that the state is requiring when it comes to the husbandry of animals has also changed the number of headcount that you have to have as far as staffing. So our staffing changes have been a result of the direct needs as far as the care required by the state for the animals.
And that's your biggest part of your budget, would you say?
Yes. That is probably one of the larger pieces. When you look at animal welfare, that is always going to be one of your larger pieces, because again, it's 24/7.
You know, we talk about how nice it is to see our county grow and da-da-da-da-da. You've got 6,000 in there now. You didn't have 6,000 in there, what, 2 or 3 years ago? And what are you going to do when you get 7,000? That's part of what you're saying you're trying to avoid. I buy what you're saying. I mean, if I had to take care of that many animals a day, and I knew that dogs being dogs will multiply like humans will multiply, you better be ready when they start coming in more than they have now. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for taking care of our family, our furry family and friends. I do have 2 questions. So the first question is relative to the fundraiser that you just recently had. What did that yield? And then the second question would be, if this does not surpass, where will your passion lie with the Humane Society and our furry family and friends? Thank you.
So our Furball was our most recent Black Tie Gala event. And so it had a net of approximately $275,000 to $285,000 for that evening. And those proceeds go into, obviously, the general operating piece of it. Forsyth Humane Society does an amazing job when it comes to Furball and is generally very successful with our fundraising piece of it. As far as where this would go, if this does not work, Forsyth Humane Society is committed to this community. And to be honest with you, we're committed to doing more, being better, and making Forsyth County a better place. And so we will continue the great work that we're doing. We will be loud, we'll be proud, we'll be out there, and we'll continue to do exactly what it is that our community needs. As I shared with the county manager, we have no desire for this to be contentious. We want this to be an amazing partnership, and we will do everything we can to work with the county. What's being proposed is only going to drastically increase the amount of euthanasia in our county, and that's not something we're going to be able to fix if we're not a part of the actual working process.
I know this isn't really on the subject of what we're talking about, but I have a little dog at home, and every time I come close to a chair, he thinks I'm going to sit down and give him a treat. And he loves that. He'll jump 2 or 3 times a flip. What are you planning for 6,000 animals for Christmas?
A lot of peanut butter treats, let's say that. So.
Yeah, bless their hearts. They're looking forward to it. I bet if you told them you're going to get a big surprise on the 24th.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay.
Thank you all.
Can we take a break, sir?
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
move that we take a recess for about 10 minutes?
I will take a recess for 10 minutes. This period has been completed. Commissioner Kaplan is rejuvenated, feels good, we're ready to go. And I'll turn the meeting over to our Vice Chairman, Don Martin.
I think we're ready to go over our briefing items from the county manager for our November 10th, 2022 briefing, a regular meeting on the November 10th.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. Yep, we have basically those items to consider. We do have 2 matters for closed session to go into when we finish the open session items. So when you're ready, I'll read that motion. We'll go ahead and dive into the agenda for the November 10th meeting. The first item is a public hearing to consider the expenditure of county general funds for an economic development project and authorizing execution of an agreement with the company. You heard from Kyle Haney last week, and so we won't do that presentation again. Obviously, we wait and we'll, on the day of the meeting, actually present the name of the company and go back through that presentation so that you can have that public hearing and then you can consider that item. The second item is a special resolution. It's a resolution authorizing November 2022 as Adoption Awareness Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Sharita Kane is here, and she'll talk just a little bit about that, and then there'll be a formal presentation on November 10th. Sharita. Hey.
Hi, good afternoon. Forsyth County Department of Social Services, we are extremely excited because November is one of my favorite months. It is actually National Adoption Awareness Month. And the goal of November, of our Adoption Awareness Month, is to get the word out to the community, to the county, and to the state about the need of children in foster care that are available and free for adoptions. And so we are extremely excited that you guys are looking at our proclamation and that you're willing to approve it so that we can get the word out to the community that we are in need of families that are willing to provide permanent homes, permanent safe homes for children in foster care in Forsyth County.
Thank you very
Just
much.
one comment, please, Mrs. Vice Chair. I heard your interview on WSNC-TV, the other radio program. Very enlightening. Congratulations. And again, thank you for the work you're doing at DSS in that regard.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rita. All right, we have 6 budget and finance matters. Item 4 is an amendment. Well, let me back up. There are the minutes, but they will be forthcoming, and we'll get those out to you. Item 4 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2023 budget. It appropriates North Carolina Department of Commerce building reuse grant funds to the Department of Community and Economic Development to benefit CathTech LLC and Frank L. Bloom Construction Company. Christopher Ong will review this briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. Good afternoon. Forsyth County Board of Commissioners adopted resolutions authorizing the county to apply for and accept North Carolina Department of Commerce building reuse grant funds to support the expansion of CathTech LLC and Frank L. Bloom Construction Company in Forsyth County on June 23rd, 2022 and August 4th, respectively. Department of Commerce notified the county that both applications were accepted, with CathTech awarded $300,000 and Bloom Construction Company awarded $250,000. The county will serve as the administrative agency for both grants. This amendment for the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance appropriates these grant funds. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell us what that money's going to be used for.
For building reuse, I'm not sure exactly what facility, but we can certainly get you that information and bring it back.
That's what I thought. Yeah, we'll verify that, but I think you're right. All right. All right. Christopher Ong also has the second item. It's an amendment to the 2019 Housing Grant Projects Ordinance that appropriates additional home program income.
Right. So this request is to amend the 2019 Housing GPO. CED Department has received $225,000 in additional home program income that the department would like to use towards helping additional first-time home buyers and home rehab clients. Approval of this action increases the budget and appropriates these funds for allowable home expenditures. I'll try my best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
All right, yep. Agenda item 6 is an amendment to the 2022 Blues Lake Capital Projects Ordinance that appropriates funding allocated in the state budget. I'll turn it over to Kyle Wolf.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the county was allocated $700,000 in the state budget, in the most recent state budget, that were not earmarked for specific projects. And so this item is appropriating $100,000 of that $700,000 into the Blues Lake CPO. The remaining $600,000 will be passed through the county to the towns of Tobaccoville, Rural Hall, and Walkertown, but we'll be bringing an item in the future for those funds in those in that interlocal agreement. This will increase the CPO budget by $100,000, bringing it to a total of $5.8 million with this action.
So, and I mentioned it actually in my advance email this morning. We had been in conversations with Senator Krovic and her office. Because we did not understand that was her direction on that really until recently, and had met with her a number of times, and that was her intention when she included that in the budget. And she is very appreciative that we are working through that. And I'm actually going to be in Tobaccoville tonight to talk with the town of Tobaccoville leaders about their intended uses for those facilities. But I've talked to all the managers, and all three of them have projects. And I said they need to be in the near term. Since we're going to be essentially the administrator of those contracts, we're going to have to get that money spent and out there. And so anyway, we're off and running with that, and hopefully that will buy some goodwill as we move into the long session, frankly. And I think it will.
Just one related question, Kyle. We have a projected date for the Blues Creek project to get off the ground?
I'd probably ask Damon.
Sure. So we are finishing negotiations on the guaranteed maximum price. We should be bringing you an agenda item for your December 1st meeting. So we would, if that's successful and the board adopts that, start construction at the beginning of 2023. And we anticipate about a year's construction. So the park hopefully will be open in early 2024.
Thank you.
Dudley, I do have a question. We initially said that $700,000 was being allocated where? And then the second part of my question is, since we're not utilizing this money in that capacity, where does the other money come from the projects that we were going to approve?
Yeah, so the Blues Lake, we're using those dollars to purchase that property at Blues Lake, and those dollars are sufficient to do that. The Doral Drive property, which we're purchasing at Tobaccoville, is the other one. That's actually on this agenda. We can do that within the budget, but that project has other funding needs as well. And so, we, in this year's PAYGO, there was $5 million for that project. And so that will help. Our total project cost still has a shortfall of about $5 million to really do that project the way it needs to be done. And that's going to be a big part of our legislative ask this year.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
thank you. Hopefully she's listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's right. And we've talked that up with her, and she's enthusiastic about that. I will tell you that my understanding of that, and apparently she's done this in other counties, she just hadn't done it in Forsyth, is she gets a limited amount of sort of direct appropriation. And so this is because, and it's limited not so much by dollars, but by the numbers. And so this was a way of her being able to kind of reach out to and spread that money out a bit. And I understand that. I think it would have been helpful if we'd have known that when we saw that $700,000 in the budget, but we'll live and learn from that. So.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Kyle, while you're there, I'm going to go ahead and jump to number 8, so you don't have to stand back up. It's an amendment to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. It's the Rural Operating Assistance Fund.
Sure. So at the last meeting, the board authorized staff to submit an application to the state for the Rural Operating Assistance Program. It's funds that we receive pretty much every year. There was a couple of years ago when we did not receive it because the state didn't put it in their budget. But it's in there now, and so it's $273,888. It's for our EdTap program, or the EdTap program and the Employment Transportation Assistance Program. And so this is really just appropriating those dollars that you approved to apply for last week.
Thanks, Kyle. All right. I'll jump back. Agenda item 7 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget ordinance that appropriates revenue from the Center for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention for the Department of Public Health's participation in Mid-South Lifestyle Studies. Sheree Sutton.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. Today, joining me, I have Ms. Carrie Leonard, our community nutritionist, as well as the lead for this project. The item before you is a budget ordinance amendment in the amount of $14,000. The funds will be used for training, education, counseling, training space, also program incentives for the participants. And now I have Ms. Carrie to give you a brief overview of the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The Med-South Lifestyle Program is an evidence-based behavior change intervention that translates the Mediterranean dietary plan for the southeastern population and guides participants through making lifestyle changes in both their eating and physical activity behaviors. It also provides the participants with access to a Med-South Lifestyle counselor, as myself, during programming administered at the Department of Public Health. Do you have any questions for us at this time?
What kind of counselor are you?
It's a lifestyle coach counselor. So it's essentially just motivating the participants and as well as teaching them about the nutrition and physical activity requirements for the program.
So you're a nutritionist as well?
Yes. So a nutritionist is like a dietitian, but I don't quite yet have my certification for that. So I've gone through the schooling for all of it, but just waiting to pass that exam.
Some of us on this board can use your
Thank you.
Yeah, I sort of had a related question. Did I hear you say Mediterranean diet you were promoting?
Yes.
Okay, can the senior citizens take advantage of that too?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I do have
Olive
one
oil,
quick question.
right?
Thank you for being here.
course.
So where are the participants? How do you choose those participants?
So I have just recruited so far just without through the county employees. But I am just in charge of the recruitment. UNC Chapel Hill, who I'm doing this study through, they go through the screening process and forward them on through the database to be educated.
From our system? Is it from our system?
No, it's it's called REDCap. It's Research Electronic Data Capture. It's what UNC Chapel Hill uses.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the question is how can folks in Forsyth County participate?
Correct.
That's really where that was going. Yeah.
Oh, how? Oh, well, they could reach out to me, but I can put out a larger marketing material. I've really just reached out through what I'm accessible to, but I've only been working through the county for 6 months, so I'm still pretty limited in that area.
So get with Ed McNeil and let's get something out there. I think it's the point there.
Thank
so.
you very much. Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Great. All right.
Great.
Very good. Agenda item 9 is a resolution authorizing participation by the Forsyth County Office of Environmental Assistance and Protection in the North Carolina Local Government Debt Set-Off Program.
Good afternoon. I'm coming to you today seeking your consideration of approval for our office, my agency, to participate or to utilize the North Carolina Local Government Debt Set-Off Program, which was established by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and the League of Municipalities to help provide us with an additional, a new tool to collect unpaid debt from people who fail to pay their civil penalties that we use when we need to on occasion. We do resolve almost all of our enforcement cases through negotiation of voluntary compliance of the requirements of the county code, but occasionally we have to resort to civil penalties as a deterrent to repeat offenses and to help motivate people to make better decisions. So this program collects the debt that's owed to the county from tax refunds and lottery winnings if the citizens are due to receive money through those two resources.
Very good. Thank you, Mina.
I do have a question. How often would you say that you would have to utilize this? 10%?
So, we deal with a few hundred cases a year.
Okay.
And for the last 3 years, we have averaged a total of 13 civil penalties total for the year. So it represents a very small number of cases where we have to resort to using civil penalties to help motivate people. And during the last 3 years, we're averaging about 5 of those 13 per year going unpaid even after we send a demand payment letter. So that's about 38% of the total.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thanks, Minor. We've got one grant item. Mark Davidson will come up and present a resolution authorizing submission of an application to North Carolina Department of Transportation, Division of Aviation, to apply for and accept if awarded a grant to fund the South Aircraft Parking Ramp improvements.
Good afternoon. As Dudley just mentioned, and I brought this up at a couple previous meetings, in partnership with Piedmont Flight Training, the Airport Department would like to submit an application for funding for the North Carolina Department of Transportation Division of Aviation based on capital needs of the airport and business development projections from Piedmont Flight Training. There's potential funding available from the Aviation Economic Development Fund and State Financial Aid Fund. The South Aircraft Parking Ramp is in need of pavement rehabilitation and the auto parking resurfacing. In addition, other improvements such as a sidewalk and shadeport constructions are needed to accommodate the growing needs of Piedmont Flight Training. Together, the county and Piedmont Flight Training is a strong candidate for funding, and staff is requesting permission to submit an application. The total project would be $2 million, so we're asking the state for $1.8 million, and then we would have a local share of $200,000.
And just to clarify, the $200,000 is a part of the airport funds now that you can, for the matching dollars.
We would use local airport funds.
That's what I meant. But you all have that available to match.
Right, and I would have to come to you with a CPO amendment.
And can you talk a little bit about the shade ports in terms of, I can understand the tarmac surfacing, so the shade ports are eligible for that particular grant funding?
Possibly, yes. From discussions with Amanda Connor with the NCDOT Division of Aviation and what David Mounts needs with flight school, it's a good idea to keep that fleet of 20 under shade, but often use T-hangars at airports like individual garages, but in this case with the high usage of the flight school aircraft, he's hoping to get funding for shade ports. It's like a carport with no sides.
Right. Let me just see, I want to take a little bird walk here on this to the discussion we had last week about the contract with Piedmont Flight Training, the lease, and essentially there is no lease proposed yet for the shade ports and the tarmac piece, correct?
To expedite the project, what we thought were 4 board items. One was a ground lease with the flight school.
All right.
Second is this grant that I'm bringing to you. Third would be I guess it would be actually working with David or I might want to rely on Gordon for this. We were talking about an instrument that we would use like we do with other aircraft parking on the public ramp as individual tie-down agreements. So we would go that route with him for the individual aircraft parking spots. And then a fourth item would be the construction of the shade ports, where we'd work out a financial deal where we would get covered for our costs plus a price escalation of CPI. Does that make sense?
So you don't envision that, assuming there were some kind of, we had an arrangement with Piedmont Flight Training, that there would be additional shade ports that would be available for the airport to lease?
His request is 20, and I'm going to ask the NCDOT for 20. If he's unable to list or lease all those, we could, definitely open it up to the public. And I think we could possibly get more aircraft on our ramp if we had shade ports available.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right.
Mark, could you tell me what the waiting list is for a hangar, a T-hangar now?
It is on our website. We just had updated the list about a year ago because, first of all, let me explain the T-hangar waiting list that he's referring to. A lot of airports, they try to gauge their demand for T-hangars, which are like individual garages for aircraft. All of ours are full. All the ones that Signature Flight Support has are full. And so all you do is you request the form from us, you get your name on the list, there's no security deposit. So what we want to do, because this list has been over 10 years old, is we want to see if these aircraft owners, per se, or pilots still had aircraft. So we had contacted each one of them to see if they wanted a large or a small T-hangar. The list was over 40 when we started. I think it's about 13 or so when we got done with making sure people were still interested. Because typically in an airport, you have a lot of people that are on the tie down out in the elements that are waiting for a T hangar, or they're in a community hangar, a much larger hangar, and waiting for one. But the piston market in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, has kind of come down a little bit, and there's not a lot as mentioned as there were before, but I think the list is pretty strong at 13 or so.
So if you built these shade ports, what's the likelihood that someone waiting for a T hangar would take one?
I think it's pretty high.
So why are you building 20 and not 40?
Because most people prefer a T hangar.
I understand we don't have any though, right?
Right.
So the step down is the shade port, and the step down from that is just a tie down, right?
Right.
So why would we not build more shade ports that we could rent so that people on the waiting list or others to come would have a place to go? May not be their first choice, but
Before David, I've not had any requests for shade ports. I am nervous about we're building 2 corporate hangars, 20,000 square feet. We have one of them leased to Signature. The county's going to operate the other one.
Right.
I'd want to make sure that one's filled before we start offering other.
Yeah, but those are going to be mostly they're not really going to be for the little Piper or the smaller planes, the single engine. So the corporate hangars, and by the way, board, let me say that there is this new thing going on, what's been going on for about 3 or 4 years, where corporations will have, let's say a convention for lack of a better word, but they'll have some sort of demonstration, and they're doing them at hangars and airports, and their patrons are flying in for a show for the day. The automobile industry is really doing it more than anybody. I think we know about one in Ocala, and there were some others. So these hangars, the ones that we're building now, are really multi-use facilities. They could be for these fly-ins that corporations have, these so-called fly-in vacation conventions, right? We would use one of them for that.
We're
right?
100% full of hangars, and I don't foresee it being empty for those kind of events. But
no, I'm talking about one of the new ones, the corporate hangars.
Right.
One of those.
Well, we tore down a hangar to accommodate one of the
Correct.
new ones, and I think the Kwanzaa Hut's going to have an issue. So I'm a little nervous about even needing more hangar space. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to debate you up here.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So, but we would have, I mean, there is it seems to me a good business decision while you're building these things to go ahead and build more shade ports than the flight school would need. It seems to me that would be sort of a smart thing to do while you're already out there doing the work. And I've seen the one in Greensboro, and it's pretty full. I mean, they've got T hangars, shade hangars, and all kinds of stuff, but it seems to be pretty full.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So agenda item 22 is the resolution approving the execution of the ground lease agreement between Forsyth County and Piedmont Flight Incorporated. So there is not, that is not there, those negotiations are still underway. And so I just, that is part and parcel of this item as well, but we'll have a chance to answer any questions on that a little bit later. 2 items for ARPA funding, 11 and 12. Aisha Carter will come up and review the 2 contracts that she's working on right now. We are hitting our stride on getting round 1 finished up in terms of all the agreements out there in round 2, and so I'll turn it over to Aisha.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Aisha Carter here to present 2 resolutions relating to ARPA funds. On September 22nd, 2022, the Board approved a preliminary ARPA Round 2 funding plan, which included these 2 projects at the stated expenditure amounts. The first one is a resolution approving the execution of an agreement with Senior Services to construct an intergenerational center for arts and wellness with ARPA funds. The center will be built adjacent from the current Senior Services facility located at 2895 Shorefair Drive, which is near the Coliseum. The center will meet the daily needs of older adults who are living with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, participating in the day program by bringing health, wellness, arts, and intergenerational program partners under one roof. The expenditure request is for capital at $2 million. The second project is a resolution approving Forsyth County's request for the Highland Avenue Park project with ARPA funds. The expenditure request is for $1.6 million in ARPA funding to 1, enhance community programming on the Health and Human Services campus, and 2, add a park on an acre of land adjacent to 651 North Highland Avenue. This project primarily serves the historically marginalized population and will provide the community with more accessible educational and recreational opportunities. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them now.
Could Tanya take a bow for that, though?
Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. We have a number of contracts. Joshua Swift will come up and review the execution agreement between Forsyth County and Medic Staffing Solutions.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a resolution to enter into an agreement with Medic Staffing Solutions to provide temporary physician assistants or nurse practitioners in the Forsyth County Department of Public Health for our sexually transmitted infections, family planning, tuberculosis, and immunizations clinics. A contract will be utilized until staff is hired to resume these duties. Contract amount is not to exceed $115,000 for the remainder of the fiscal year. Do you have any questions?
All right. Thank you, Joshua. Agenda item 14, Denise Price will review. It's a resolution authorizing the purchase of pharmaceuticals from Cardinal Health. So, Denise.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Forsyth County operates a limited formulary retail pharmacy. We primarily dispense medications for behavioral health conditions, also for prescriptions that are written by our public health clinic clinicians, and also for EMS. We purchase name brand and generic medications, and we do that on a daily basis as needed to supplant the inventory. The purchases for brand name prescriptions are usually patent protected for a number of years once they hit the market, so it's not much negotiable. Your opportunity to save money there is buying in volume. Our pharmacy is small, but we're not unique. The state of North Carolina has entered into an agreement with Cardinal Health 110 LLC. They're through the MCAP Infuse Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. That's operated by the state of Minnesota Office of State Procurement. It's a national cooperative group purchasing organization that does collective purchasing for 13,000 members. So we get the benefit of 12,999 other purchasers. Most of the time, for our generic prescriptions, Cardinal Health is also the cheapest place to get that. But there's more competition there, and we do see some sales occasionally. So prior to purchasing any generic medication, we check 3 vendors. We purchase from the lowest cost. So what we're asking for is permission through October of 2023. Try to think what year we're in, through October 31st, 2023, to be able to purchase pharmaceuticals from Cardinal Health 110 LLC in an amount not to exceed $3,525,000. Any questions?
Go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Agenda item 15, our DSS Director, Christine Dowdell, will come up. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of agreement between Forsyth County and North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. It's our big agreement with them, so I'll let her tell you about it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is the annual agreement of Memorandum of Understanding between the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and Forsyth County to comply with the requirements of law, General Statute 108A-74, which specifies mandated performance requirements and administrative responsibilities with regard to all Department of Social Services programs other than Medicaid assistance. Requirements are detailed in the attachments that are attached to the agenda items. It includes energy programs, work first, food and nutrition services, child welfare, foster care, adult protective services, special assistance, and child support services for child welfare. This agreement shall become effective July 1st, 2022, and continue through effect until June 30th of 2024. The written agreement will authorize the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services to withhold state and federal funds in the event Forsyth County Department of Social Services fails to satisfy mandated performance requirements or comply with the terms of the agreement. And the Budget Department will ensure that these performances requirements are entered and tracked in county measures.
Very good.
Anyone have any questions?
Just one question, Mr. Vice Chair. I read the document. I didn't see a dollar amount.
There is not a dollar amount. Basically, if it really depends by the state. So if the state were to come in and take over Forsyth County, then their state employees would get paid out of our budget. And so that's what the reimbursement is. But we're not nowhere near that, so that's why there's no dollar amount.
It's really the performance agreement that we have with the state is what it really is. And it's been very helpful in that they are very specific about the metrics that we have to hit. And so, but it also is a powerful performance agreement because they can penalize counties and we see all that data about how everybody's doing is very public and I got to say, we do a great job. It's not always easy, and things go up and things go down, but we are doing a remarkable job. And I know you was being involved with the DSS board previously, and you've seen it not be so, and it is now very, very good. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Agenda item 16, Carr Boyd with EMS is going to come up and talk about it. It's a resolution awarding a contract for the purchase of medical supplies for Forsyth County Emergency Services. Carr.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Before you is a resolution to award a contract for the purchase of EMS medical supplies for Forsyth County Emergency Services. City County Purchasing competitively bid these medical supply items, receiving bid packages from Medline Industries and Boundtree Medical LLC, respectfully. Following staff review, the Medline Industries bid was considered non-responsive as it failed to meet critical requirements of the bid specification. It's the recommendation of County Management and the City County Purchasing to award the medical supply contract to Boundtree Medical LLC in the annual amount not to exceed $416,549.41 for an initial term of 3 years with the option to renew the contract for 2 additional one-year periods. The price will remain the same for the initial 3-year period, and they may not increase more than 3% each of the additional one-year periods with documented supply price increases. I'd answer any questions you may have.
I got a couple. In just reviewing that, I'm just sort of surprised there's not a competitor for Boundtree Medical. I mean, it's a $1.2 million contract that you're committing. I mean, the 3 years if it's renewed to 2 years, and there's not more folks that handle. I mean, I'm just trying to think where do hospitals buy all their medical supplies? Are they all buying them from Boundtree, or there's got to be competition in the marketplace for that?
There is. I spoke to purchasing. They did reach out to 9 vendors to solicit potential bids, and they just unfortunately they received the 2 as we tried to go to a single source provider for our medical supplies. We put out 191 items.
Would we be better off in splitting that up into maybe groups of supplies? I mean, there's a lot of variation, and maybe there are more vendors that could compete. And have you talked to there got to be huge purchasing departments at Novant and Atrium that ask them, where are you buying all your stuff? And it just seems it got to be better. I mean, and there's got to be a reason that 9 vendors are not responding, and maybe it's because they can't meet everything, which is because you're looking for single source. And I mean, I recognize there's a lot of convenience in a single source provider, but you're paying, I think, a big premium for that single source, and there may be 2 sources might save a little money and still be pretty convenient in that. And it seems like we've had this discussion before on this very issue, and because this contract must have just run out. Was Boundtree the provider in the last 3-year period?
It was, and actually that was, yes, sir. That's who was awarded.
I think we had this conversation 3 years ago.
Well, we consolidated it when we did it. We went the way we are now 3 years ago because of the other concern that there were
bulk. We weren't getting bulk prices.
We weren't getting bulk prices, so we sort of chased this thing around the stump a couple times. Yeah, I mean, I think let us do this. What we know we can do is we can query other jurisdictions with other vendors to see if to see for the majority of supplies you're buying, because there's, like anything, you know, there's one-offs, but there's lots of things that we buy a lot of. And I think the major concern would be of those things we buy a lot of, that those prices absolutely got to be competitive. And I think we can get to that, you know, by almost surveying the Novants of the world and what have you. We can do whatever you need us to do with this. It's a hard thing because we have limited capacity to buy from lots of vendors. We do not have a purchasing person. And if you think about the logistics of keeping ambulances just full of lots of different supplies is a chase. And one thing that Boundtree does that I think one reason why they locked down the EMS market is there's actually logistics software that comes with this. And so that logistics software lets us manage that part of the process. And so I think it's a case where you might not have gotten bidders because somebody's figured out a pretty good mousetrap on that. Is that
Well, and I noticed that was one of the reasons that the Medline Industries did not meet specifications, because it sounds to me like it's because one of the reasons we rejected them was because they can't use a proprietary piece of software.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
if that's the way the bid specs are written, there is nobody else that can bid on this, period. And I think maybe we need our own, a different sort of software that can handle this in some other way to do it. There's got to be, that just strikes me as a monopoly to me.
Well, they've got a good mousetrap. So, I mean, the question would be, are the prices through Boundtree? And so why don't analyze that, because my recommendation would be different if we were paying prices higher than Medline for the bulk of what comes through there. But the savings you have associated with just the logistics piece of it beyond that is would need to be factored into that equation.
I think you could answer that question before next Thursday.
We can.
We
can.
That's
That's what
I mean, I'm sure there's a couple things that you buy just lots, literally almost tons of, that you could look at.
Yeah, but if I got to add a position to deal with the logistics of not having the software, then it makes some sense. I think Carr knows we've worked on this enough. Let's make sure we get that answer.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it, Carr. All right, Gary Kuntz is going to, item 17, Gary Kuntz is going to review a resolution approving the renewal of a multi-factor authentication security subscription service. He has to describe what that is.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a renewal of services, of online services that we have for, we call it multi-factor authentication. So when you go to sign in for a county service, you get your username, you get your password, and then it'll ask you for some other form of, either a 6-digit code, or you get a phone call back, or another factor. That's why I call it multi-factor, because there's several different ways we can identify that you are who you say you are. With a lot of our services now available online through, to enhance our business continuity standpoint, it's more important than ever that we know that you are who you say you are. We have these services in place today. This is just, like I said, a renewal of the services. We do this annually. We could look, and I have looked at doing a multi-year contract, but respectively, I try to make sure that we get bids more often than not. So we did put this out for proposals. They're listed on the resolution. We did receive 3 of them, one of which was a state contract. The state contract price was the highest price, so we're procuring services for less than that. So this resolution approves the purchase from Brooks Network Services for multi-factor authentication services for $123,125, and that is, again, an annual cost. We could see some savings if you guys would entertain a multi-year renewal. I'm open to that. I would entertain questions if you have any.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had one question quickly. I got a call this week. They said it was from MIS. When I called back, it said the line was busy, so I couldn't get back through. So I was wondering if you made any calls out to identify those who have office phones or anything like that, or somebody just trying to prank me, or what the status of it might be?
That's a really broad question, and I don't know if I can answer that standing right here before you. Our staff doesn't call you back to verify you are who you say you are, although one of the multi-factor authentications that we do use is a phone callback, but it's an automated system. And those numbers will be, the service we use that for predominantly is through Microsoft Authentication. So it would have not been a local number. But without seeing your specific example, I don't know. My staff won't call you asking you to verify you are who you say you are. You're close enough, we'll come see you.
Yes, I am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm interested in cost savings, so that you said that there could be possibility of some cost savings around a multi-year contract. What would that look like?
So they differ based on how many years you renew for. It's usually, 10 to 20%, potentially more than that, depending on if you do a 3-year or a 5-year renewal. The most costly method we can go is an annual renewal, but I do know that this board typically likes to see things bid on more often than not.
Sure. What are your feelings about a possible 3-year?
3-year would be great. 5-year would be great. It just depends on how long you guys want to go between bids. The longer you bid, I don't think we could get a longer than a 5-year quote. 3 years is really the sweet spot on services.
Yeah, I am a little predisposed on some of the, and Gary and I talk about this a lot, but technology changes.
It does.
And people come up with better mousetraps all the time. And so, you almost have to, multi-factor authentication has only been around in broad use for a fairly short time. But
Right. Okay. I just wanted to know.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted to know.
Sure. I'd love to do whatever you guys would like for me to do.
No, you're the subject matter expert, so I'm going to do what you say.
3-year renewal would be great for me.
get the price on it and see what they do.
Thank you.
Okay, I would have to bring it actionable by next
You could
week.
just let me know, a sidebar, that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you want to take action on that this year.
No.
I'll-
No, we'll see where we
This
are.
agreement runs out at the end of November, so we have to pretty much hit this next
November?
meeting,
This November?
this November 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can save us, I think what I'm hearing from the board, if you can bring something back and we can
That'd
adjust
be
it, even on the
significant.
fly next Thursday, it saves money, I think that will make Ms. McDaniel very happy.
Yeah, but if it's not significant, I'm not interested in it.
I'll bring it, or let you know, I'll let Dudley know, you can pass along through your meeting managers, whatever you do, and I'll put it in a percentage, so you know percentage-wise what we'll be saving.
That's
if
fair.
that suits you.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
since the bids are so close, I'd probably say go ahead and do this year simply because if I'm the two bidders that don't get this, if you had told me I had a 3-year option, I might have had a little sharper pencil too.
Well, I will reach out to all three of these vendors since they did propose that and ask them for a 3-year pricing. I would ask them to submit a 3-year pricing.
I got you.
That's
Thank you.
fair. Thank you. I'm
But
sorry to make you
they
do a
would
little
have the
bit more
opportunity to
work.
reply back,
Okay,
if that's acceptable.
it is acceptable.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 18 is a resolution authorizing execution of a contract to provide legal services for in-rim foreclosure actions on delinquent real property accounts. John Burgess.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm pleased to bring you a solution to our need to institute the process of in-rem foreclosure in Forsyth County. Funding for this year's portion of the project is already secured and available in our budget. As you'll recall, we've discussed this situation over the last several years and the circumstances that create the need for us to have in-rem foreclosure as a tool in our toolbox. As we work through the logistics of starting an in-house program, we centered on the hiring a staff attorney and a staff paralegal. And we also initiated discussions with our current mortgage-style foreclosure attorney as well. After consideration, it's my recommendation that we embark on a pilot project for in-rem foreclosures with our current mortgage-style foreclosure attorney, which is Zacchaeus Legal Services. In North Carolina, there are 2 styles of foreclosure for property tax, and both are very useful, and they're each best when tailored to a certain circumstance based on the ownership of a property. The mortgage style of foreclosure will remain our primary style of foreclosure. However, we've been doing a mortgage style foreclosure now in volume for about 11 years. And out of that, you find certain properties that really the mortgage style process is not conducive to or economical to process in that way. So I currently have 227 accounts that are in need of NREM foreclosure. And it's basically a catch-up project. That's why we have a project, is to really catch up this volume. After the catch-up is completed, we anticipate that NREM foreclosure would still be useful, but it would only be about 10% or so of the cases would be helpful in NREM. The term of this contract that's proposed is for a period of 2 years, beginning in January 1st of 2023, and would not exceed $200,000 per year. The typical account cost will be $2,000 plus an average expense amount of $1,125. This proposal also makes financial sense for the county. Of the anticipated cost of about $3,125 per account, up to 44% of that is potentially recoverable by the way that we can put certain expenses on our tax bill, and if the property is sold, then those funds could be secured to help offset some of the cost up to 44% of the time. If you'll remember, a year or two ago, we were talking about this, and I gave you the example that's not too hard to find. For a foreclosure case, we had to serve about 87 parties to give them notice that we would be foreclosing on the property. And if we did that in our traditional mortgage style approach, it would take anywhere from $9,000 to $14,000 to secure that. And it would take multiple years. In NREM, we can do that inside of 1 year, and it would be somewhere between $1,700 typical cost. So the county has a lot less risk in processing these, because in the end, what we're really talking about is, well, we hope they're not sold. We hope this really brings about payment of the taxes. But if it does bring about a sale, we certainly don't want to have too much risk in dollars that we've invested in trying to get these to that process, because when they sell for what they sell for, and it may not even cover our expenses. So it helps us to have a lower expense threshold going in. The project volume would be 16 accounts per quarter for a total of 64 accounts per year. So I'm sure you're following along here, and you can figure out the math doesn't work in one sense, is that the current volume of properties that I need to do this process on, and what I'm asking for a 2-year project at $200,000 a year, it would really take us 4 years at that rate to do all of our catch-up project. But I do believe that the amount of money we have budgeted is adequate for us to certainly make significant inroads down this process. We'll be gaining experience as we go along. So will our vendor, there's no vendor in North Carolina that does NREM foreclosure at all. And so that's why it's a pilot project. We've done a lot of research, but at the end of the day, you're still doing something pretty new. And so we're learning, and they would be learning as well. But that's why we're bringing a 2-year contract to you for this. And be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Where's this firm located?
They are in Trenton, North Carolina, down east. I'm not sure of the county name, but Trenton, North Carolina.
Say it's in Duplin County, but I could be wrong. Somebody could Google that. But it's down east.
Okay, gotcha.
They're very experienced. There's 2 firms in North Carolina that do mortgage style programs in volume, and this is one of them is our vendor, the other one doesn't do. Well, none of them do currently NREM, and so this would be a pilot project for him.
Yeah, 2 quick questions, please, John. You said 227 cases or accounts had to be processed. That's out of roughly how many cases, ballpark figure?
So our foreclosure program really began in earnest in 2011. Mm-hmm. Since then, in rough numbers, we've had about 4,000 cases go to foreclosure. About 90, I don't want to tell you the wrong number here, about 94% of those cases do pay out. And so the properties are not sold and things like that. We've probably to date sold about 170 properties throughout that 10 or 11 year period.
It's not many, and these cases that John's talking about kind of most of them ran through the mortgage style process, and you couldn't come to a conclusion because of the ownership issues. And so you've heard me say this. I mean, this is one of those things that's going to be it's a game changer in the community, because we all know that when a home's sitting there, taxes aren't being paid on it, ownership is in question, those decline. Those properties are going to be, most of the time, in pretty steep decline. And so this is a really important project.
I agree.
And John, you said 94% usually pay?
Yes.
I'm raising the issue because I've seen a list of foreclosures near the airport that sort of disturbed me a little bit. You know, properties, second-generation homeowners just didn't pay the property taxes, and it was pretty substantial over there in that community. So I hope this will help them eradicate those issues for them.
I didn't go through our steps, but as I've mentioned before, I mean, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we go through all of those as best we can before we go to foreclosure. So foreclosure is always our last option.
All right. Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you, John. So Kirby Robinson's going to take us home, Kirby. So he's got 4 items here to review, and I'll introduce them, and then you can take off and do your spiel, and we'll get through them. Agenda item 19 is a resolution authorizing execution of a contract to purchase real property located at 7212 Doral Drive.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Manager, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. Ivy Lane owns property at 7212 Doral Drive, and she has offered to sell that property to the county for $210,000. It is located adjacent to what will be the future agricultural park complex in Tobaccoville. That property is highlighted in blue on your screen. It's located south of property the board acquired a couple of months ago off of Doral. So it's 5.4 acres in size, again, located off Doral Drive in Tobaccoville. Acquiring that property would essentially double the county's road frontage there on Doral and really make a turn-in to a future complex a lot easier, especially if you got a big truck or a trailer or something like that. You know, the site could also be a viable replacement property for a portion of the Land Water Conservation Fund easement that currently encumbers the entire Caladium North site. So if the National Park Service were to authorize a conversion of that easement, the county could then sell a portion of the Haynes Mill Road property to the NCDOT for right-of-way, and then use the proceeds for that sale to help pay for a portion of this acquisition. The proposed contract would be subject to a 30-day due diligence period, and additional closing costs are not expected to exceed $5,000. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Make the deal before they change their mind.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
As I recall, you have visited the house?
I have, yes, sir.
And do you think it has potential for any use with the potential future event center, et cetera, et cetera?
Great question. And yes, sir. So Chris Weevil from the Parks Department and I went out and met the owner there. It's actually their family home. Her father grew up there. A lot of love in the house. And what we saw is something that's been taken care of over the years. It's older, but would actually make a really cool park office down the road. And it's something that, there's going to be a little work around pulling a heating oil tank out of the ground and, reworking some plumbing. But for the most part, the bones look good. And we're actually planning to incorporate that property into the site plan to present to the Park Service to show how it could actually support that.
I got it. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Agenda item 20 is a resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement with Winston Forsyth County Board of Education.
Right. So in terms of background on co-location and maintenance services, the board will recall that you sold 31 acres of real property located on Lansing Drive to Front Street Garner. That was in June of 2021. That property, of course, now is part of Garner Foods, and it's a warehousing and manufacturing facility there. As a condition of that sale, the board leased back a portion of that property to allow the school system time to exit the property. So the property that was sold is highlighted in blue on the map. So that's the entire property. The school system was using the entire property for maintenance operations, bus parking, and a few other things. The red line is sort of an approximation of what was leased back. So the school system is on the east side of that red line. So also kind of going on at the same time, a little prior to that sale, the county and the school system commissioned a study to assess each entity's maintenance operations and recommend options for collaboration, if any. That study did recommend co-locating automotive services together, as well as sharing some equipment and resources between similar trade areas. So the goal of co-location is obviously to share a variety of resources to help reduce collective costs, but increase the efficiency and effectiveness of maintenance services in this context between the two organizations. So since that sale, the county staff as well as school system staff have been working together to really identify ways to kind of actualize that. How can we co-locate, and then what do we need to relocate? So in order to exit the Lansing property, the school system needs to relocate about 129 positions. So those positions generally break down between three trade areas. That's maintenance, grounds, and automotive services. Consistent with that 2020 study, the work group really focused on co-locating automotive services and then relocating the other trade areas in close proximity. So a couple of those considerations that we really had to take into account during that process were access to county fuel pumps. So the school system uses our pumps to fuel. Proximity to trade groups to one another, so there is synergy between their trades. They share resources. Oftentimes they share personnel. There's inventory storage, and there's large equipment storage. So there are a couple things to tackle there. To co-locate the automotive services component, the county plans to construct an addition to its fleet facility. This addition will service the rolling stock of the school system, which is basically their white fleet, their regular cars, not buses. And a rendering of what that might look like is on the top right of the screen. The county's facility, this is, I think, the rear view of the facility is here, and the addition would be on the side, and here you can see kind of a side view of where the bays would be. To relocate maintenance offices and the related functions, the board purchased real property located at 3810 North Liberty Street earlier this year. It's a 17,000 square foot facility. It can accommodate a mixed use of shop, office, and training space. And additionally, the school system staff has identified the Haynesville Ranch site as a relocation point for other ancillary maintenance services. You really got three different sites kind of working together here. And of course, a picture of the 3810, the old Piedmont Credit Union's on the bottom part of the screen. So all of that work and planning really boils down into the interlocal agreement that's in front of you today. The intent of that agreement is to establish the terms by which the county will lease property to the school system, defines our various roles within construction projects, and creates a space and equipment sharing program between the two entities. The proposed term is for 10 years. Each group holds a 1-year termination ability in the agreement should something change. It sets forth the financing and construction terms. So it sets aside a $2 million budget for renovations, right? So and that's money the school system can use to renovate the maintenance office, which is 3810, as well as school system owned property that's specifically related to co-location. So the board had previously set aside a pool or a budget for general co-location and maintenance services. This $2 million is a portion of that. The specific county contribution is $1,295,000. The school system would contribute $705,000, which is what they realized from the Shore Road sale. The agreement also defines specific dates by which the school system must deliver design and construction information, or cost information, to the county related to their renovations. And then it says that all of that construction has to be completed by May 31st, 2024. The reason for that is that Garner Foods is chomping at the bit to start phase 2 of their project. They will not grant an extension, so we must be out of that property by in June 2024. So we're trying to encourage completion of those renovations a month ahead of time, just to be safe. And then it says that the school system will be the construction manager for their projects. It also includes or incorporates the lease agreement for the maintenance office, which is 3810. That's proposed at a nominal rental rate at a triple net structure, which essentially means that the school system won't pay rent, but they are responsible for the operating and maintenance costs of that facility. That facility is specifically intended for use as maintenance offices and associated operations. The automotive services facility, again, so we'd expand the automotive services facility, and we would need to lease that to the school system. It says that we will bring that to the board within 90 days of a certificate of occupancy, so that will be forthcoming. It is intended to be for a nominal rate, but for a full-service gross lease, meaning that the county will pay for the operating and maintenance costs there, because it's really an extension of a county facility. Then it establishes the shared space equipment and resource program where the county will pay for school system vehicle-related liquids, which essentially are lubricants for vehicles, up to $25,000 a year. I sort of refer to this as the sharing and caring program, where we're trying to co-locate. We're together out there, and there are efficiencies in sharing those resources and economies of scale. It does dissolve the previous fuel agreement the board authorized that allowed the school system to use the county-owned pumps, fuel pumps, but it takes the exact same terms and puts them into this agreement. It just simplifies it by having one interlocal agreement out there. And then it allows for shared use of the county warehouse and then tools and equipment between the two groups. They may have a tire balancer that we don't have. It may be that we have service bays open and they have an excess amount of vehicles, so they can use our service bays. So it really is that sort of sharing and caring approach. The aerial on the right side of the screen kind of shows what all that looks like. The top part that's shaded in blue is the maintenance office. The purple area is the county warehouse. The red area would be the automotive services expansion, and the orange area is where our fuel pumps are. So we're all, again, kind of in close proximity to one another. So what's the current status of this project? Again, the bottom line is the school system must vacate the Lansing Drive property by June 30th, 2024. The Board of Education approved this agreement package at their October 25th meeting. And if approved by the board, the agreement will really turn the project over to the school system for full implementation. That means renovating the facilities, but also relocating from Lansing. Design work on the county side is underway for the automotive services expansion. And I'll just quickly say, there are a lot of moving pieces to this project. There's a lot of work that we still need to do, but staff, I think, really feels good about the product that we have here. We feel like it really accomplishes the goals of the 2020 study for co-location, assessing our various trade areas, and will ultimately, at the end of the day, increase the efficiency and effectiveness of maintenance operations between the two organizations moving forward. That's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
I had one question. Oh, go ahead. I put 40 years of my life in education, basically. So don't take this the wrong way. Why are we paying the school system $25,000 for liquids?
And my wife has actually put 16 years of her life in as a teacher, so I get you. The liquid thing is kind of misleading, right? So when we're designing the automotive services facility, rather than giving them an oil tank, when we already have an oil tank, we'll just share ours, right? And it's hard to really track, how much of that you're pumping out for us and for them. I think it's just an efficiency. Really, there's money they're already spending on that in their budget that can essentially move over to our budget.
Yeah. So big picture, and we pay for our maintenance operations, and then through funding for the schools, we pay for their maintenance operations. So the taxpayers are paying for both of these operations, and what we see, what will happen here is they will save money. So when you look at the school's budget next year or the year after, whenever we can get this fully completed, there will be lower cost. And is there a way to track exactly what that is when you set the school's budget? But maybe not so much. But we will lower the taxpayer cost because you're doing it together, and that was the spirit that Kirby's worked so hard to try to pull this off. And that was not always easy because there's a lot of turf, and I had to remind the schools a couple times that we're buying both fleets are still us, and so this is one step into a consolidation that's really hard to do, and Kirby's done a great job, and it's not been easy because some of the players they don't really want to. They don't want to co-locate. So
a lot of cheese being moved, but I think you did a really good job with that, Kirby. I appreciate that. The one thing I remember from some of the other discussions, we had several, was that there was going to be another facility built on the 3810 in the back. But if I'm connecting the dots, I think that's what the hope might be for some of the stuff at Lawrence.
Yes, sir, that's right. So in the back of the maintenance office, we were talking to the airport about converting this, I guess it's a hangar, into the maintenance shop. Because you really have a shop component of the school system that needs a home. And so part of the budget was going to be to renovate that facility. I think it needs a fair amount of work. And I think in stepping back and looking at it, they feel like they can convert part of the Haynes-Lawrence site to support that while still remaining within the confines of the zoning classification there.
I think when the folks get together, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Is what I think.
Yeah, that loose end could be looser than we think, that part of it, but that's it, but it's kind of their issue. Kind of their
Thank
issue.
you, Kirby. This has been needed a long time. Thank you.
Amen.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with that.
All right. And then the next one, item 21, resolution authorizing execution agreement for lease of county-owned property with the schools. So
Right. Earlier this year, the board might recall you exercised your option to purchase real property located at 4021 Reynolds Court from WPDA. We call that Whitaker Park. An aerial of that is in the top right screen. There's a bunch of numbers on this thing, but our facilities are right under the letter E. There's 60510 and 605.7. It's really two warehouses, but we call it a warehouse because it's connected by a little breezeway there. That has been leased to the school system really since the county was tenant. We actually just subleased it to them under the board's direction. That facility has become a critical part of their technology operations over the years. The original lease has expired, and they do desire to execute a new agreement for the facility. The proposed terms are a 5-year agreement, nominal rental rate with a triple net setup. Again, they're responsible for the operating and maintenance costs of the facility there. That's consistent with the previous agreement. The intended use is for storage of personal property and office space for their personnel. As landlord, the county would not provide services to the facility, but should the school system incur repair costs over $25,000 a year, the county will have the option to support them in that. That is consistent with how we've handled other public entities like the state with nominal leases. So at the end of the day, the intent there is for them to pay for the day-to-day costs of the facility, and if the roof needs to be replaced, we need to look at that together. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
It's a good deal, too. Thank you.
all right, very good. And the last one, a resolution authorizing execution of a contract with F. Brian Bryce.
Okay. I apologize. Let me bring, oh goodness. From current slide. I'm getting better at this. All right. Pardon me. So the county is considering purchasing a piece of real property, and during negotiations for that property, we've learned that due to the former use of the property, it likely has some environmental issues. So the county previously retained the law offices of F. Brian Bryce Jr. To conduct a preliminary evaluation of those environmental conditions and to help advise us on how those conditions might affect our future intended use of the site, what the potential scope of our remediation would be, and of course that equals some cost, and then what our degree of potential liability would be should we purchase the property. That outside counsel does recommend that should the board want to move forward with that purchase, we obtain a brownfields agreement or other similar agreement in working with the state. This contract specifically authorizes a flat fee of $95,000 for outside counsel to draft, negotiate, and obtain a brownfields agreement or similar agreement on behalf of the county. It includes an additional $10,700 funds for expenses and contingency for a total contract of $105,700. The agreement will only be effective should the board decide to move forward with the purchase of that piece of property. So we feel like it's prudent to tee it up now, so when we're ready, if the board does desire to move forward with the purchase for a due diligence period, we're well positioned to move through that. Happy to answer any questions the board has.
Good.
Thank you.
Great, Kirby. All right.
Yes, sir.
That is it. There's one report that you can see there, and other than that, I just have the closed session motion.
Mr. Chairman, could I quickly?
Oh, yeah.
I want to quickly do an update on the Operation Green Light for Veterans, and I promise I will not talk about this anymore, but I'm so excited. Our staff has done an outstanding job with the green lights, and I understand that they've worked here at night to make sure the lights were good and green. And then Mike Anderson, I asked him if he could do something at Triad Park at the Carolina Veterans, and he came up, and so Damon is going to do a quick slideshow so that you all can see how well our county building will be lit up. Also, the city is lighting up their building. Reynolds building will be lit the 10th through the 13th. So it's going to be exciting, and I wanted to share this with you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Wisenhunt. So Operation Greenlight is an initiative from the National Association of Counties, and Commissioner Winston brought that to staff's attention, and it's an opportunity to show appreciation for our veterans. Federal, state, and local partners are who NACO is emphasizing. So what staff have done is figured out a way to light up the government center green, so you can see the main entrance on the left here, and then you can see kind of the portico part here underneath. This is at the Field of Honor at Triad Park. And so staff talked with the veterans group there to make sure that we we're sensitive to honoring that space, and they thought this was a great idea. And so they figured out a way to light up the obelisk at Triad Park, the Field of Honor. So that's an example of that there. And then those are the two facilities. And again, the dates are November 7th through the 13th. And then we will continue to do this through that time and beyond if the board chooses.
We might get reports that aliens have landed in Kernersville. I don't know.
But thank you, General Services. Thank you to all the staff that participated. Mike, I thank you, and it will be a great thing, and I hope we can continue to do this every year. Thank you all.
If I could, Mr. Vice Chair.
It'd be great if we could get those pictures in the paper maybe next week.
That would be nice if Wes is watching.
Right.
When you say the paper, you're talking about the Winston-Salem Journal?
Winston-Salem Journal and the Kernersville News, because this the Kernersville News is right out there with the Triad Park, and be a great thing. We need to get those pictures out so they could. Those would be great front page things.
If I could add 30 seconds to the conversation, at our board meeting for the Creative Corridors the other evening, I requested all bridges be lit up green also. So they should be done also 7th through the 13th as a part of the city's contribution to this effort.
That's good.
Thank you.
Get lit before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
That would get everybody's attention, right?
Closed session motion.
Please don't do that.
Oh, Ted, this is your chance.
I gotta wait for the German motion.
Closed session motion. Yep. Need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss two matters. One matter to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged pursuant to provisions of North Carolina General Statute 143, 31811A3, and one matter related to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations pursuant to provisions of General Statute 143, 31811A4, since no other business will come before the board. This meeting, following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned.
You did.